I was walking down the aisle toward the man I loved when the world exploded into fire, glass, and screaming metal. And when I woke up 6 months later in a hospital bed, the person I trusted most in the world had stolen everything from me, including the life of my fiancé. My childhood best friend, my business partner, the best man at my wedding, had orchestrated it all. And he thought he'd gotten away with it. The Napa Valley vineyard had been perfect that September morning in 2024. Golden light filtered through ancient oak trees, their leaves just beginning to hint at autumn. David stood at the altar in his charcoal suit, his eyes glistening as he watched me approach. My mother dabbed at her tears in the front row. And Lucas Chen, who'd been my best friend since we were 12 years old, who'd helped me build FortiGuard Systems from a dorm room project into a $50 million cybersecurity company, stood beside David with the rings, beaming like a proud brother. I remember the weight of my dress, the scent of lavender and rosemary from the vineyard gardens, the way my heart hammered with joy so pure it felt like I might float away. I remember Lucas catching my eye and mouthing, "You got this," with that familiar crooked smile. I remember thinking that this was what complete happiness felt like, surrounded by everyone I loved, about to marry my soulmate, my company thriving, my future blazing bright. I took another step toward David. Then the world ended. The gas explosion tore through the venue's lower level with the force of a bomb. The floor buckled beneath my feet. A wall of heat and pressure slammed into my back, lifting me off the ground. I remember David's face contorting in horror. Remember him lunging toward me, his arms wrapping around my head and shoulders as we flew backward together into chaos. Then nothing. Nothing for 6 months. When I finally clawed my way back to consciousness in March 2025, I didn't know that David had died shielding my body. I didn't know that 12 of our wedding guests had been seriously injured, including my mother, who'd lost most of her hearing in her left ear. I didn't know that I'd been in a medically induced coma for 23 weeks while my body fought to heal from third-degree burns, a fractured spine, and traumatic brain injury. What I did know was pain. Pain that lived in every cell, every nerve, every breath. "Elena," my mother's voice thick with tears. "Oh, thank God, you're awake." My father's hand gripped mine. "We're here, sweetheart. You're safe now." A nurse appeared, checking monitors. "Welcome back, Dr. Rivera. Don't try to talk yet." The next few days were a blur of doctors and therapists telling me about the explosion. About David's funeral, which I'd missed. About my injuries. Each piece of information landed like another blow. David was gone. The man I was supposed to marry, gone. He died saving me. The guilt was suffocating. But everyone assured me I wasn't alone. Lucas had been by my bedside constantly, they said. Lucas had managed everything. The hospital bills, the legal issues, the company. Lucas had kept FortiGuard running smoothly. My best friend, my savior. 2 weeks after I woke up, I was finally in a wheelchair for physical therapy. After the session, I sat alone in a sunny room staring out at the San Francisco skyline. The door was slightly ajar. Then I heard Lucas in the hallway. "Yeah, I'm here every day, playing the devoted friend." A pause, then a cruel laugh I'd never heard from him. "No, she's still pretty out of it. Doesn't remember much." My blood turned to ice. With shaking fingers, I opened my phone's voice recorder and hit record. The board bought the mental instability angle? Good. The power of attorney was the tricky part, but Chen did solid work on the forgery. Pause. Yeah, the 50 million in shares transferred clean, and the insurance company paid out the 2 million. It's all in my accounts now. My vision blurred. This couldn't be real. Look, I know it sounds cold, but she always got all the credit. This was always supposed to be my company. She was just in the way. And David? A tinny voice on the other end. "Collateral damage," Lucas said flatly. He threw himself on her. The facilities manager did his job, weakened the gas line, timed it perfectly, all looking like an accident. Nobody's looking too closely when there's that much chaos. 22 years. We'd met in 7th grade. He'd taught me to skateboard. We'd built our first firewall together at 16. We'd gotten matching tattoos when FortiGuard landed its first major contract. He'd stood beside David at the altar, and he'd watched us nearly die. No, he'd made sure we died. "I need to go," Lucas said. "She'll be back from PT soon. Can't have her getting suspicious." Footsteps approaching. I stopped the recording and hid my phone. Lucas walked in, his face transforming into tender concern. "Elena, how was physical therapy?" He crouched beside my wheelchair. "You're looking stronger every day. David would be so proud." I looked into his eyes and saw a complete stranger. "Tired," I managed. "Just really tired." "Of course." He squeezed my arm. "I'll let you rest. When you're ready, we should discuss Q2 projections. I've been keeping everything running smoothly." After he left, I sat in that room and let the truth wash over me. My best friend had tried to murder me, had murdered David, had stolen everything, and he thought he'd won. That night I played the recording back. Listened to his cold voice admitting everything. David's face flashed through my mind, his smile, his eyes, his arms wrapping around me in those final seconds. Something hardened inside my chest. Lucas thought he'd destroyed me. He had no idea who he was dealing with. I spent the next week playing the traumatized victim perfectly. Weak, confused, compliant. Meanwhile, I was planning. My parents had depleted their retirement savings, helping with medical bills. Lucas had been helping too, accessing my accounts with that forged power of attorney. I needed help. Real help. But I couldn't let Lucas know. Dr. Sarah Ochoa, my neurologist, provided the solution. During an examination, I said quietly, if I needed to contact someone privately, nothing anyone could trace, could you help? She studied me. "Are you in danger, Elena?" "I need to know the truth about what happened." She nodded. "I have a colleague. Former FBI, very discreet." 2 days later, Marcus Webb appeared, posing as Uncle Robert. He listened as I played Lucas's recorded confession. "This is good," he said, "but we need more. Documentation, paper trails, witnesses, forensics. Whatever it takes," I said. "I want everything, every detail of what he did." "You're sure?" "This will hurt. You'll learn things that make the betrayal even worse." I thought of David's last moment, of my mother's destroyed hearing, of Lucas's cold voice, collateral damage. "I'm sure," I said. "And then I want to destroy him." Over the next 3 months, while I underwent physical rehabilitation, Marcus and his team worked miracles. They found the insurance policy Lucas had taken out 8 months before the wedding. $2 million, my signature forged. They traced the forged power of attorney to corporate lawyer William Chen, who'd received $200,000 in consulting fees. They interviewed 3 fired FortiGuard employees who'd noticed irregularities and been terminated. They found Richard Morrison, the facilities manager, drowning in guilt. After weeks of careful approach, Morrison confessed everything on video. Lucas had offered him $50,000, told him it would just be a small fire, no one would get hurt. Morrison weakened the gas valve. Then the explosion killed David. "I didn't know it would kill anyone," Morrison sobbed. Marcus obtained full immunity for his testimony. Security footage showed Lucas leaving the venue exactly 3 minutes before the explosion. Not panicked, just walking calmly, checking his watch, getting in his car. 180 seconds later, the building erupted behind him. Digital forensics recovered Lucas's search history from 6 months before. Gas explosion statistics, life insurance payout timeline, coma patients, forging power of attorney documents, undetectable murder methods. They also recovered text messages between Lucas and his 4 co-conspirators, Park, Chen, Armstrong, and Morrison. One text sent 2 days before the wedding. "Everything's in place. After Saturday, FortiGuard is mine. She always trusted me. That's her fatal flaw." By June 2025, I had a cane, a plan, and a case file 3 inches thick. "It's airtight," Marcus told me. "Federal prosecutors are ready. Conspiracy to commit murder, attempted murder, insurance fraud, securities fraud, identity theft, RICO violations. All 5 conspirators, all documented." "When do we move?" Marcus smiled grimly. "Lucas is planning a huge IPO celebration next month. $500 million valuation, 300 investors and press at the Ritz-Carlton. He wants his moment of glory. Then let's give him one he'll never forget." The next 4 weeks, I stayed invisible. I moved to a small apartment, played the traumatized survivor. Lucas visited occasionally. "The IPO's next Friday," he mentioned. "It's going to be huge. I wish you could be there, but I know crowds are still hard for you." "Yeah," I said softly. "Too overwhelming." "That's okay. I'll represent both of us. Partners forever, right?" I looked at the shield tattoo on his wrist, identical to mine. "Right," I whispered. The night before the IPO, I stood in my apartment staring at my reflection. thin, scarred, leaning on a cane. But my eyes were hard as diamonds. I called Marcus. "I'm ready. The FBI's in position. They'll move on your signal." I called David's mother. "Justice is coming tomorrow, for David." Her voice broke. "Thank you, Elena." Then I laid out my outfit. Not morning black, a red dress, power red, justice red. The Ritz-Carlton San Francisco was blazing with lights when I arrived at 7 p.m. Through the tall windows, I could see the ballroom packed with Silicon Valley elite. Venture capitalists in expensive suits, tech journalists with notebooks and cameras, FortiGuard's clients and partners in cocktail attire. Champagne flowed. Laughter echoed. Celebration filled the air. At the front of the room, on a raised stage with FortiGuard's logo projected behind him, Lucas stood with a microphone in hand. He wore a custom Tom Ford suit, probably cost $5,000, bought with my stolen money. He was telling the story of FortiGuard's journey, his voice carrying that familiar warmth that had fooled me for 22 years. "It hasn't been easy," he was saying as I approached the entrance. "We've faced challenges, tragedy, devastating setbacks. The loss of my dear friend and partner Elena Rivera's fiancé was—" He paused dramatically, his voice catching with fake emotion, "was almost too much to bear. But FortiGuard has always been about integrity. About innovation. About doing what's right, no matter the personal cost. And tonight, we celebrate not just our IPO, but our commitment to those values." The crowd applauded. Some people wiped up their eyes, moved by his performance. I walked through the main entrance, flanked by FBI agents in dark suits on each side. More agents, 15 in total, fanned out through the room, moving to predetermined positions near each of the 5 conspirators. My cane clicked on the marble floor. The sound was soft, but in the momentary lull between Lucas's sentences, people nearby heard it. Heads turned, whispers rippled through the crowd like a wave. "Is that? It can't be. Oh my God, it's Elena Rivera." Lucas saw me. The microphone nearly slipped from his hand. His face went from confident to confused to pale white in the space of 3 seconds. I walked slowly, deliberately through the crowd. Every eye in the room followed me. The crowd parted like water, people stepping back, creating a path straight to the stage. Cameras flashed. Phone cameras rose. This moment would be recorded from a dozen angles. An FBI agent, Special Agent Sarah Martinez, who'd been leading the investigation, stepped forward and spoke quietly to the event coordinator. Within seconds, I was being helped up the 3 steps to the stage. My cane clicked on each step. My red dress blazed under the spotlights. I was handed a microphone. Lucas stood frozen 5 feet away, trapped in the spotlight with nowhere to run. The mask was slipping. I could see panic in his eyes. "Lucas gave a beautiful toast at my wedding," I said into the microphone. The room fell absolutely silent. 300 people holding their breath. He talked about friendship, loyalty, and trust. He talked about how we'd built FortiGuard together from nothing, how we'd been through everything side by side, how nothing could ever break our bond. Lucas tried to smile, tried to play it off. "Elena, what are you? This isn't the time." 3 minutes later, I continued, my voice steady and clear. "He murdered my fiancé, David Chen, and tried to kill me." Gasps erupted throughout the ballroom. Cameras flashed frantically. Phones were everywhere, recording. Lucas's face went from white to gray. "Here's the proof," I said. The massive screens behind us, 4 enormous displays meant to showcase FortiGuard's impressive quarterly metrics and growth projections, suddenly filled with evidence. The recorded phone conversation played through the ballroom sound system, Lucas's cold voice admitting everything to the entire room. I gave the toast, walked out to the parking lot, and counted to 180. Perfect timing. The security footage played next. Lucas checking his watch, walking calmly away, the explosion behind him 3 minutes later. Timeline graphics appeared, laying out the entire 14-month conspiracy in clear, undeniable detail. Photos of all 5 co-conspirators. Bank records showing the payouts: $200,000 to William Chen, $150,000 to Judith Armstrong, $50,000 to Richard Morrison. The forged insurance policy. The text messages include Lucas's words, "She always trusted me. That's her fatal flaw." Morrison's tearful confession played, his young face twisted in guilt and horror. The search history appeared on screen. How long do coma patients stay unconscious? Undetectable murder methods. Every piece of evidence, laid out for 300 witnesses and dozens of cameras. Lucas tried to run. FBI agents were already there, moving in from both sides. They grabbed his arms, spun him around, produced handcuffs. No, wait, this is a misunderstanding. She's confused, brain damaged, she doesn't know what she's... The only misunderstanding, I said clearly into the microphone, my voice carrying through the stunned silence, was me thinking you were human. Across the ballroom, agents were moving in on the other 4 conspirators. Richard Park, the CFO, tried to hide behind a champagne table. Judith Armstrong screamed that this was outrageous. William Chen demanded to see a lawyer. All 4 were cuffed and arrested simultaneously, in front of 300 witnesses. Tech journalists were already live tweeting, their fingers flying across phone screens. FortiGuard CEO arrested for murder conspiracy at own IPO celebration was trending within minutes. An FBI agent, a tall black woman who introduced herself as Special Agent Patricia Williams, read Lucas his rights in clear, formal tones. Lucas Chen, you're under arrest for conspiracy to commit murder, attempted murder, insurance fraud, securities fraud, identity theft. The list went on and on. Lucas's head hung down. The fight had gone out of him. He looked smaller somehow, diminished, revealed for what he truly was. As they led him toward the exit, past rows of shocked investors and horrified guests, he finally met my eyes. The mask was completely gone now. No more fake warmth, no more pretend concern, just rage and disbelief, and the dawning realization that he'd underestimated me catastrophically. You were in a coma, he hissed as the agents pulled him past me. You weren't supposed to wake up. You were supposed to die. I leaned closer, my voice soft enough that only he could hear. Surprise, Lucas. I'm harder to kill than you thought. And while you were celebrating and spending my money, I was building your prison. They took him away. The ballroom erupted into chaos. Shouting, questions, crying, camera flashes like lightning. But I just stood there on that stage, leaning on my cane, and let myself breathe fully for the first time in months. It was done. David, I thought, it's done. We got him. Special Agent Martinez appeared at my elbow. Dr. Rivera, we need you to come down to the federal building for formal statements. But I wanted to say... She paused, her professional composure cracking slightly. What you did here, the evidence you gathered, the case you built. I've been with the Bureau for 19 years. This is the most comprehensive civilian investigation I've ever seen. You did what most trained agents couldn't do. And you did it while recovering from traumatic brain injury. I had help, I said quietly. You had determination, she corrected, and courage, and David would be incredibly proud of you. My eyes filled with tears. Thank you. The trial began 8 weeks later, in August 2025. The San Francisco federal courthouse was a circus. Courthouse steps packed with reporters from every major news outlet. CNN, MSNBC, Fox News, Bloomberg, TechCrunch, Wired, cameras everywhere. Legal analysts offering commentary. True crime podcasters setting up temporary studios in nearby cafes. David's family sat in the front row of the courtroom gallery. His mother, his father, his 2 younger brothers. They'd embraced me when I arrived that first day, all of us crying together. Thank you, David's mother whispered. Thank you for not letting him get away with it. My parents sat with them, a united family bound by grief and the pursuit of justice. The prosecution's opening statement was devastating. They played Lucas's recorded confession, the one I'd captured on my phone that day in the hospital therapy room. The jury's collective gasp was audible. Several people in the gallery started crying. One juror put her hand over her mouth, her eyes wide with horror. Over 8 weeks, the prosecution methodically destroyed any possible defense. They called witness after witness, presented document after document, played recording after recording. Richard Morrison testified about Lucas's manipulation, his voice shaking as he described being threatened and coerced. He said if I didn't do it, he'd make sure I never worked again. He'd tell everyone I was a thief, get me arrested for stealing from the vineyard. I was 22 years old. I was terrified. I know that's not an excuse. I know people got hurt. I'll spend the rest of my life trying to make up for it. Security experts testified about the 180-second timing. The probability of someone leaving a venue exactly 3 minutes before an accidental explosion? Dr. Helen Zhao, a statistics professor from Berkeley, explained to the jury. Statistically impossible to be coincidental. We're talking about odds of several million to one. Forensic accountants traced every dollar Lucas had stolen. Handwriting analysts proved the forgeries on the insurance policy and power of attorney documents. IT forensics experts walked the jury through Lucas's search history, each search term more damning than the last. Lucas's lawyer, an expensive defense attorney named Marcus Whitmore, who'd been paid $500,000 up front, tried desperately to create reasonable doubt. He attempted to paint me as mentally unstable, claimed I'd fabricated the evidence in some grief-induced psychotic break, suggested that the explosion really had been an accident and I was seeing conspiracies where none existed. Then the prosecution played the text messages, all 47 of them. The jury read Lucas's words on the courtroom's projection screen. "She always trusted me. That's her fatal flaw. When you trust too much, you make it easy to be destroyed." Another text, sent the night before the wedding. "Tomorrow, everything changes. Tomorrow, I become the sole founder of FortiGuard. She'll be dead, and everyone will feel sorry for me. Perfect crime." The defense had no response to that. When it was my turn to testify, I walked to the witness stand without my cane. I'd been working hard with my physical therapist, building strength, preparing for this moment. I wanted the jury to see me standing strong. I told them everything. About 22 years of friendship from 7th grade math class to building a company together. About trusting Lucas more than anyone except David. About asking him to be best man at my wedding because he was family to me. "He stood beside David at the altar," I said, my voice steady despite the tears streaming down my face. "He held the rings. He gave a toast about love and loyalty and friendship. He told everyone how happy he was for us. And then he walked outside, checked his watch, and counted to 180 while the building exploded behind him." I looked directly at Lucas, who was staring at the defense table, unable to meet my eyes. "He killed the man I loved," I continued. "He tried to kill me. He stole my company, my money, my future. And he did it while pretending to be my friend, while everyone praised him for being so devoted, while he sat beside my hospital bed and planned how to spend the money he'd stolen." 2 jurors were openly crying. A third had her hand over her mouth. The rest looked furious. "He didn't just betray me," I said finally. "He betrayed every person who trusted him. Every employee at FortiGuard who believed he had integrity. Every investor who thought he represented our company's values. Every guest at my wedding who thought they were attending a celebration, not a murder." The prosecutor asked me one final question. "Dr. Rivera, what do you want the jury to know about the man sitting at that defense table?" I took a breath, choosing my words carefully. "I want them to know that Lucas Chen is not the person he pretends to be. He's not the warm, loyal friend everyone sees. He's not the devoted partner who stood by me after tragedy. He's a calculated, cold-blooded killer who planned for months how to murder me and steal everything I'd built. And if he'd succeeded, if I hadn't woken up, if I hadn't overheard that phone call, he would have gotten away with it. He would still be pretending to be a good man while profiting from murder. That's who he really is." The courtroom was silent when I finished. Even the reporters had stopped typing. The defense's cross-examination was brief. Marcus Whitmore tried to suggest I was biased, angry, not thinking clearly. But every question he asked, I answered calmly, factually, with the evidence to back me up. Finally, he asked, "Dr. Rivera, isn't it possible that you misunderstood what you heard, that your brain injury caused you to interpret an innocent conversation as something sinister?" I looked at him steadily. "Counselor, I have the recording. The jury has heard it. Lucas confessed to orchestrating a gas explosion, counting to 180 seconds, and stealing $50 million in company shares. There's no misunderstanding, there's no interpretation needed. He confessed, and you know it." Whitmore had no more questions. The trial lasted 8 weeks total. The prosecution rested with a mountain of evidence that was absolutely insurmountable. The defense put on a weak case, trying to suggest alternative theories that crumbled under the weight of documentation. The jury deliberated for 4 hours. 4 hours to decide the fate of 5 conspirators. When they returned, the forewoman, a middle-aged woman named Patricia Chen, no relation, who worked as a high school principal, stood and read the verdict with a clear, firm voice. On the charge of conspiracy to commit murder, guilty. On the charge of attempted murder, guilty. On the charge of murder in the first degree for the death of David Chen, guilty. On the charge of insurance fraud, guilty. On the charge of securities fraud, guilty. Guilty. Guilty, guilty, guilty. All counts, all 5 defendants. Lucas Chen, 25 years in federal prison for attempted murder, conspiracy, fraud. Eligible for parole after 20 years. Richard Park, CFO, 12 years for fraud and conspiracy. William Chen, corporate lawyer, 15 years for forgery and conspiracy to murder. Judith Armstrong, board member, 10 years for securities fraud and conspiracy. Richard Morrison, facilities manager, 8 years for manslaughter and assault, but sentence suspended due to cooperation and evidence of coercion. 5 years probation instead, plus community service and mandatory therapy. The judge, a stern woman named Honorable Sandra Martinez, also ordered collective restitution, $15 million to me for the stolen funds, $5 million to David's family for wrongful death, $2 million divided among the 12 injured wedding guests. When the verdict was read, David's mother collapsed in tears of relief. My father had to help her out of the courtroom, but before she left, she turned to me and mouthed 2 words, "Thank you." Lucas finally looked at me one last time as the bailiffs led him away in handcuffs. No rage now. No disbelief. Just emptiness. The hollowness of someone who'd gambled everything and lost catastrophically. I didn't look away. I met his eyes steadily, letting him see that I'd survived, that I'd won, that every single evil thing he'd done had been exposed and punished. Then he was gone, led away to begin a 25-year sentence in federal prison. It was over. The aftermath was a whirlwind that lasted months. Every major news outlet covered the trial and verdict. The story had everything: betrayal, murder, corporate fraud, a dramatic public arrest at a Silicon Valley celebration. Forbes ran a cover story, "Tech's Darkest Betrayal: How Elena Rivera Brought Down Her Would-Be Killer." Wall Street Journal published an investigative piece on corporate conspiracies and internal fraud. TechCrunch did a deep dive on FortiGuard's future and what happens when a company's leadership is exposed as criminal. "The Best Man's Murder Plot" became the title of a Dateline NBC special that drew 8 million viewers. The video from the IPO arrest went viral, over 15 million views in the first week alone, shared across every social media platform. My face, my red dress, my words, "He murdered my fiancé and tried to kill me," became one of those cultural moments that people reference, that gets turned into memes and commentary and analysis. Lucas's LinkedIn profile was deleted within hours of his arrest. His name became synonymous with corporate betrayal and cold-blooded calculation. Business schools began using the case as a cautionary tale about ethics, governance, and the dangers of unchecked ambition. But more importantly, things changed at FortiGuard and beyond. I regained control of the company in September 2025. My first act was cleaning house. I restructured the entire board, implemented new oversight systems, and created checks and balances that would make it nearly impossible for any one person to seize control again. I developed AI-powered tools that could detect unusual patterns in leadership behavior, sudden financial transfers, secret meetings, suspicious communications. We called it Guardian Protocol, and it became one of FortiGuard's flagship products. Over 200 companies have now licensed it, using our technology to protect themselves from internal conspiracies and sabotage. I established the David Rivera Foundation in November 2025, naming it after the man whose death had started this entire journey. The foundation offers free legal support, private investigation services, and resources to victims of corporate crimes, workplace betrayal, and violence by trusted associates. We've helped over 200 people so far. People who were betrayed by business partners, people who were defrauded by family members, people who trusted someone and paid a terrible price for that trust. We give them the tools to fight back, the resources to pursue justice, and the support to rebuild their lives. I testified before Congress in January 2026 about corporate governance reform, about the need for better insurance fraud detection, about protecting whistleblowers and creating systems that make conspiracies like Lucas's harder to hide. Several of my recommendations became part of new legislation that passed later that year. FortiGuard developed an ethical security certification program, a comprehensive training and oversight system that companies can implement to demonstrate commitment to genuine integrity, not just the appearance of it. Over 200 companies have adopted it now, from startups to Fortune 500 corporations. And I wrote a book. It took me 9 months, working late into the night, reliving every painful moment. Walking down the aisle, How My Best Man Tried to Kill Me became a New York Times bestseller for 16 consecutive weeks. The book advances alone were over $2 million. Film rights were optioned by a major studio for an additional $5 million. All of that money, every single dollar, went into the David Rivera Foundation. The money from the restitution helped too. $15 million recovered from frozen assets and liquidated properties. Lucas's luxury condo in Palo Alto, his vacation home in Lake Tahoe, his collection of expensive cars, all his investments. Everything he'd bought with my stolen money was seized and sold. I also regained my $50 million stake in FortiGuard. After the positive publicity from the trial, the narrative of the wronged founder fighting back and winning, the company's value actually increased. My shares are now worth $180 million. The insurance company paid out the original $2 million life insurance policy to me after Lucas's fraud conviction. I donated that entire amount to a fund supporting victims of violent crime. But none of the money healed anything. It couldn't bring David back. It couldn't undo the trauma. It couldn't erase the nightmares or restore my ability to trust people easily. Every Friday, without fail, I visit David's grave. I bring fresh flowers, always sunflowers, his favorite, the ones he used to keep on his desk at work. I sit on the grass beside his headstone and tell him about the foundation, about the people we've helped, about the changes we've made. "We did it," I whisper to the granite stone with his name engraved in simple letters. "We got justice. You didn't die for nothing." Sometimes I imagine what he'd say if he were here. Probably something about how I'm working too hard, need to take care of myself, should learn to trust people again. He was always the optimistic one, the one who saw the best in everyone. But I can't be that person anymore. That version of me died in the explosion, just like David. Sometimes I run my fingers over the shield tattoo on my wrist, the one that matches Lucas's, that symbol of partnership that became a symbol of betrayal. I've thought about having it removed or covered, but I keep it as a reminder of who I was, trusting, idealistic, believing the best of people. A reminder of who I became, harder, wiser, forever changed by betrayal. A reminder that trust is a gift, not something to be given freely, and that the people closest to you can hurt you most devastatingly. But also a reminder that you can survive it, that you can fight back, that you can take the worst thing that ever happened to you and transform it into something that helps others. I'll never be who I was before that September morning in 2024. The woman who walked down that aisle in her ivory dress, glowing with happiness, trusting her best friend completely. She died in the explosion, just like David. But someone new rose from those ashes. Someone harder, yes. Someone more cynical, definitely. But also someone stronger. Someone more determined. Someone who looks evil in the eye and doesn't blink, doesn't back down, doesn't quit until justice is served. Lucas thought he could destroy me with fire and fraud and betrayal. He thought a gas explosion and 6 months in a coma would be enough to eliminate me from his path to power. Instead, he forged me into something unbreakable. He created his own nemesis. I still walk with a slight limp, my spine forever damaged from the explosion. My back aches on cold days, a permanent reminder of what happened. The scars on my left arm and shoulder will never fully fade. I have nightmares sometimes. The explosion, the heat, the screams, David's face in those final seconds, Lucas's cold voice counting to 180. But I also have my company back, stronger than ever. I have my life back, transformed but meaningful. I have my purpose back, helping others who've been betrayed, preventing others from suffering what I suffered. Last week, a young woman named Sarah contacted the David Rivera Foundation. She was 28, had built a successful marketing startup with her college roommate. That roommate had embezzled $300,000, forged documents to remove Sarah from the company they'd built together, and gaslit her so thoroughly that Sarah thought she was losing her mind. "I don't know what to do," Sarah sobbed on the phone during our first conversation. She was my best friend, I trusted her completely. How could she do this to me? Those words hit me like a physical blow. I knew exactly how she felt. The confusion, the betrayal, the questioning of your own judgment and sanity. I know, I told her quietly. I know exactly how you feel, Sarah. But you're not alone anymore. We're going to fight. We're going to gather evidence, build a case, and get you justice. And we're going to make sure she never does this to anyone else. How? Sarah asked, her voice small and broken. How do I fight someone who knows all my weaknesses? Who I trusted with everything? You fight smart, I said. You document everything. You build your case carefully. You don't let them know you're onto them until you're ready to strike. And you remember that their biggest mistake was underestimating you. We got her justice. 3 months later, her former business partner was arrested for embezzlement and fraud. Sarah regained control of her company, and she's now one of our foundation's most active volunteers, helping other victims of business betrayal. That's what I do now. That's who I am. I'm Elena Rivera. I survived my best friend's attempt to murder me. I woke from a coma and destroyed his empire. I turned my worst tragedy into my greatest purpose. And every single day, I make sure that what happened to me and David means something. Justice isn't just about punishment, I've learned. It's about prevention. It's about protecting the next person, the next victim, the next trusting friend who can't imagine that the person they love most would ever hurt them. It's about taking the pain and trauma and betrayal and transforming it into armor for others, into shields that protect, into weapons that defend. I walk through FortiGuard's offices now, past engineers and analysts and security experts, and I see a company rebuilt on real integrity. Not the fake kind Lucas preached while plotting murder behind closed doors. Real integrity. The kind that costs something. The kind that's tested and proven. The kind that matters. My mother asks sometimes if I've forgiven Lucas, if I found peace with what happened. I haven't forgiven him. I don't think I ever will. You don't forgive someone for murdering the love of your life. You don't forgive someone for standing at your wedding as your best man while planning to kill you. You don't forgive someone for counting to 180 seconds while your venue explodes and your fiancé dies. Forgiveness isn't always the goal. Sometimes justice is enough. Sometimes survival is enough. Sometimes transformation is enough. But I have found something else. Something better than forgiveness, more powerful than peace. I've found purpose in the pain. Meaning in the ashes, strength in the survival. And late at night, when I visit David's grave in the quiet darkness of the cemetery, when the city lights glow in the distance and the wind rustles through the trees, I whisper the same promise I've whispered every week for the past year and a half. Your death wasn't meaningless, David. It meant everything. It sparked a change. It exposed evil. It created something that helps others. And I'll spend the rest of my life making sure no one else loses what we lost. The wind carries my words away into the night. The stars shine overhead, and I stand there beside his grave, no longer a victim, no longer broken, but transformed into something Lucas Chen never anticipated. Someone stronger than his greed, someone smarter than his schemes, someone more determined than his ambition, someone who survived attempted murder and came back to destroy the man who tried to kill her. I walk back to my car, cane in hand, scarred but undefeated. Behind me, on that simple granite headstone, David's words are carved forever. Words I chose carefully, words that represent everything I believe now. Love is stronger than death and more enduring than betrayal. He was right, he's still right, and I prove it every single day, with every person I help, with every case I win, with every victim I protect. Lucas is in prison for 25 years, living in an 8x10 cell, his name destroyed, his empire gone, his freedom stolen just as he stole mine. David is gone, but his memory lives on through the foundation, through the lives we save, through the justice we serve. And I'm here, still standing, still fighting, still proving that betrayal doesn't define you. How you respond to it does. How you rise from it does. How you transform it into purpose, that's what defines you. The woman Lucas tried to kill is gone forever. In her place stands someone he created but could never control. Someone who counted every single second of those 180 and made damn sure they counted for something. Someone who turned murder into meaning. Someone who transformed betrayal into purpose. Someone who walks through fire and comes out forged, not broken. That's who I am now. That's who I'll always be. And I'll spend the rest of my life making sure that what happened to me protects others from the same fate. One case at a time, one victim at a time. One betrayal exposed, one conspiracy destroyed, one piece of justice served. Until my last breath, I'll keep fighting. Because that's what love demands. That's what David's sacrifice requires. That's what survival means. Not just living, but living with purpose. Not just surviving, but thriving in spite of the evil that tried to destroy you. Not just existing, but transforming tragedy into triumph. That's my story. That's my promise. That's my life now. And I wouldn't change it for anything.